On this day, for over the last 20 years, 6,967 U.S. servicemen and women have paid the ultimate price, sacrificing their lives for our nation's freedom, for our sanities, and for all the things that make our nation the greatest nation on earth. On this very day, we remember the lives and the souls of all of the dear men and women who have served our country. For that, we thank them for their bravery, for their courage. Today, on this Memorial Day, we remember those who have fallen and have given us all that we need and have paid the ultimate price and sacrifices for the United States of America to grow and thrive. For them, we thank them. When we see veterans today, shake their hands. Tell them thank you for your proud services of this nation. And always remember those who couldn't make it home. Today on Memorial Day, we remember and honor those who have served. Thank you. From all of us at Spotlight Sports Network, we thank you all for your bravery and your services.
I heard they want the news. Well, we got it just for you. What's your team? Who your player? Who your crew? I heard they want the news. The spotlight is on you, and if you in the hot seat, it's times two. I heard they want the news. Come tune in to the crew, but we got the hook up just like black and blue. I heard they want the news. Spotlight Sports, what it do? Hit subscribe and that like button too. I heard they want the news.
Live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts right now.
Welcome, everyone. Hope all of you guys are having a great Monday. Here in the morning, it is Jake the Snake Silva from the Snake Sports Talk Show. Hope all of you guys are having a great day. We know it's not the easiest day of the year, as we all know, but happy Memorial Day as we honor those who have paid the ultimate prices and sacrifices for our nation's freedom. We think of them in our hearts, in our minds, and we always carry out the memories that we remember from them. So thank you all for your bravery and for your services to protecting the rights and the freedoms of our nation. Thank you. Well, guys, here on a Monday morning, Jake the Snake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening today. We are live on all platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and of course on Instagram, where you can follow, like, and subscribe, and also listening to us on iHeartRadio as well. Good to see all of you guys today. Wow, I guess you can kind of say what a manic Monday that it has been all around in the playoffs. What a closing finish. We will be talking a little bit more about that in the NBA and the Eastern Conference. But a couple shout outs. What's going on? Key in the building, Coach Dante, and of course, Spotlight Raiders Talk for all your Raiders content as well. And we've got game 7 tonight between the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. That is going to be a hell of a matchup. I can't wait for it. So let me just start off by recapping what we witnessed last night. Game 7s, which are always the most electrifying moments in sports, right? So the Boston Celtics have defeated the Miami Heat in Game 7. They are headed to the NBA Finals to taking on the Golden State Warriors. And there's a few things that I will point out about that. And I'll be previewing the NBA Finals as well coming up. But the one things that I do want to take away from this series as a whole is now we've come to a close. The NBA Finals is set. And there's a few things I can say. Boston, in several appearances, as we've known in the past, they've gotten this far. But when it came to crucial situations, they could not get the job done. Well, that has all changed. They got the job done. Miami is now eliminated. But the only thing that I can tell you is the impression that we were left with from the Miami Heat is that even though Jimmy Butler was giving all of his 110% on the court, there were still a lot of question marks. And there were some inconsistencies that just did not end up panning out right for them. But this does happen. And we know these truths about all these teams when they come into the playoffs. We see their game style, we see their chemistry, and we see exactly how they manage under pressure. Again, Boston is a younger growing team. New head coach. It's a historic franchise. But at the same time, too, you got to love Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. Those are the 3 components that make Boston who they are. And mind you, in this NBA Finals, you're watching 2 polar opposites of each other. You got Golden State, who are the offensive savants, and then you also have Boston, who are the defensive side. That they're great at it. They're really, really good. They'll play up on you, one-on-one matchups, and they'll beat you any way that they can. But I still thought it was a great series, all in all. Now, Miami, I know it's frustrating because the fact Jimmy Butler in Game 6, he went off, forced the Game 7, and then by this time, they just felt gassed. But it was still a hell of a matchup on both sides. But Boston moves on. And there's a few things I can take away with Boston. Because a lot of people have had questions about them from last season, the season before, and so on and so forth. But Boston in this particular moment, they relied on each other. The chemistry was great. And even when situations got tight, there was always one moment that they executed. And this is what was different about Boston. Then out of all the other seasons that we've watched them play, this, I think, was very crucial. And Jason Tatum, as we mentioned before, what was big on his end is that for as long as we've watched the series, I mean, he was great. Marcus Smart with 24 points. Jaylen Brown was also very crucial. Out of all players too, Al Horford is the exact reason why the Boston themselves, when it came to veteran leadership, when it came to you need crucial situations to execute, whether it was getting a bucket or it was getting a stop, I think Al Horford has been that type of player. There is no question about that. And so I think this was a great thing for the Boston Celtics and for a historic franchise as they are. I mean, you couldn't have capped off a better conference finals than that one. Now, even though Miami has a lot to think about with their end, because they know that there were times where there were some inconsistencies, they have potential. I think they have a great future, but there still are some components they need to fix up. But Miami is not that far away. If you would have told me 6 years from now, like 6 years ago, that Miami was going to get to this point where they were going to be competitive, I probably would have laughed. But at this point with Jimmy Butler there, you know he is the key to this Miami team. But there are still some things you got to fix up. I mean, Bam Adebayo, there were times where Robert Williams completely contained him. But there were also times where you had Tyler Hero and you had Duncan Robinson and you had a couple of other components that could step up as well. But they're not that far away. And talking about all of this and recapping a lot of the finals, this is what Jason Tatum had to say after the game.
Yeah, I truly do. And in the moment when you lose those series, obviously, it hurts and it's tough, but you never forget it. And I think, that's what we all have in common, that we all been through those tough times, and we remember how that felt. And, we didn't want to have that feeling again, leaving here tonight. So, we left it all on the floor, and obviously, we got it done. Yeah.
And that is all that you hear from Jason Tatum. Just because that in the last few seasons, when they got eliminated by Milwaukee and Miami and by Brooklyn, they shut the door on all of them. Just because you move forward does not mean you forget where you were before. And I think this was exactly the battle cry for the Boston Celtics in the last few seasons. You get eliminated by the Milwaukee Bucks, they come back and they get the job done. Brooklyn, there's lots to say about Kevin Durant and the Nets and how that they unfolded, but that job is done. And then Miami, of all teams you forced 7 games against, and you got the job done. I mean, that was great. And I think by the end of the night, the Celtics celebrated in a big way because of only those 3 crucial teams. I mean, Milwaukee was without Chris Middleton. They contained Giannis for as much as they possibly could, and it worked. It worked to the highest extent. Brooklyn, they've had a lot of different problems against, but then they swept them. Got them out that quickly. But Miami, there's no better finish than that. I thought it was great. So I think Boston should feel great about themselves. They're in the finals, and they have yet another finals appearance in their historic franchise. So this will be pretty interesting to see moving forward. All right, let me now start to preview the NBA Finals. As I mentioned before, the Golden State and the Boston Celtics are polar opposites of each other. Golden State knows how to play offense. Boston knows how to play defense. And they're also very crucial in certain situations. But if you had to ask me about predictions of this series, I think it'll be a 6-game series. But I'm leaning more towards Golden State. There's a few things that point out to me. And I've watched it several times with the Eastern Conference, and sometimes it does take a little bit longer. But there's question marks. Because now with Boston, after 7 games against Miami, what are they going to do to shape themselves against Golden State? Which we know Golden State has been in this position several times. This is now the 6th NBA Finals that only all 3, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, have been in. But what's unique about the Warriors is that they're not in any position where they panic or they're under pressure. Because having those 3 components, we know that this is not going to last for long. But all of this, I think, shapes up for 2 people. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, right? And I'll explain that. What's going on, Charles? What's going on, Chad? Thoughts on Steph Curry as a top 10 player of all? I honestly think he is. I think he's a top 10 player. I don't rank him very high, but I do rank him probably in the top 5 spot because of his leadership, because of his shots, and how he's really able to navigate through pressure, because it's never been easy. I mean, look at how many times that he's been through that against Cleveland and against Toronto. And then even the times when even in the Western Conference Finals, how many times that they've had to step up. But what's unique about that is that those 3 components know how to work with each other. They have the best chemistry. And I think it's sweet to see this of Golden State. But 2 players, as I mentioned, Kevin Durant for one, because now do you all understand? Do you all get why this is all just hindering on Kevin Durant's career? Because I know where I was, and I'm sure all of you knew where you were by that time. Because Kevin Durant, the second he left Oklahoma City, there was a reason for it. When he joined the Golden State Warriors, the Warriors won a championship before him. And Kevin Durant joined in with Steph, Klay, and Draymond and this Golden State Warriors franchise because of their leadership, their chemistry, and all the things above. And he wanted to learn how to win a championship. But it wasn't like he was lacking much in Oklahoma City. But the problem of it is, look at the roster. Russell Westbrook, Thabo Sefolosha, James Harden, Kendrick Perkins, Serge Ibaka. I can only say that 2 players, Ibaka and Kendrick Perkins, were the only 2 that were very valuable. And same with Derek Fisher, but he was on the tail end of his career. But James Harden, as we've all seen, shrinks in the playoffs. Russell Westbrook, he can't even get out of the first round of the playoffs. And he's Mr. He's Mr. Statistics because he goes for triple doubles. But the fact of the matter is that Kevin Durant, what it's proving is you either are winning titles or you're just getting paid for the bag. That's all that this is. And Golden State is proving they've won before Kevin Durant, they've won with Kevin Durant, and they're going to win after him. And this, you don't think that this is lingering in Kevin Durant's mind? I don't know what to tell you. Because I know he's thinking deep down inside, why did I leave Silicon Valley? Why did I leave a great organization to then just turn around and go to Brooklyn, and now it's a mess with Ben Simmons and with, barely a bench? Like, these are things that are big that you have to think about. We think about this when it comes to our jobs. The second you know what job field you're in, you evaluate what is your ownership? How is your management? Are you consistent and are you organized? Because there are some places that have tendencies where they have moments, but they know how to navigate through that because you have problem solvers. If you don't have problem solvers in some of these companies, you're going to struggle. Then there's going to be resentments. There are going to be a lot of, back and forth bickers. But that's because you got to figure out how to navigate through it. Golden State has had everything thrown at them, and they knew how to navigate it. They were not under pressure. Even when they lost, it was not all that bad. And that only took time for them to be healthy. And in Kyrie Irving's position, because his former team was Boston, and what Boston is throwing in Kyrie Irving's face is, we did not need you. Do you know how many times that the Celtics made it into the Eastern Conference without Kyrie Irving? 3 times. 3 times. That is without Kyrie Irving, whether he was injured or he wasn't even on the roster. Because think about it. When Kyrie Irving got injured the first year he went into Boston, Jason Tatum took that team, a young 21-year-old, to the Eastern Conference Finals and then eventually fell off. But that's impressive. They went into the Eastern Conference again and lost. But the only difference of it, too, is that when Kyrie was on the roster, they lost in the second round against Milwaukee. They got walked all over. But that's because there was not the crucial players who stepped up. But Kyrie wanted the ball so bad that he took away a lot of opportunities. And now Boston is in the finals. And this is all thrown in Kyrie Irving's face. That they did not need him. They knew he was a liability on the roster. And this is where it's a proud moment for Boston. It's a proud moment for both organizations because of the fact that when you have a winning team, you have your main components. Steph, Clay, Draymond, Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and all the rest of them. Just a decent bench. That is really all you need. You have all these superstars. I mean, look at it. LeBron James and Anthony Davis. This doesn't seem to work for the Lakers because Anthony Davis is a liability and he continues to get hurt. And it leaves LeBron in a situation where he's not getting any younger and only has so much time left to play before he's done. Kevin Durant leaves Golden State, goes to Brooklyn, injured the first year, comes around, and then has Kyrie Irving and James Harden, and they didn't do squat. And then they barely had a bench. And here's what's interesting. I mean, look at all the teams that were eliminated. Dallas, Philadelphia, Utah, Denver, Milwaukee, and Brooklyn, and even Miami. There are only a few teams that I could say have bright futures. First of all, Miami has a bright future. They just need to get the consistency under control. And they have the chance to win a championship. Milwaukee, as we know, very defensive team, but they got hit with injuries. And they contain Giannis to the fullest of their extent. Then there's Philadelphia, who I would love to believe they have that roster. I mean, it's a really good roster. But James Harden shrank. And the bench was barely a key factor. But even before they had James Harden, they had a really good bench. They had a lot of really good players. And Joel Embiid was leading the charge. And they got Ben Simmons out of town. They got the cancer out of there. Dallas, Luka Doncic, he needs a secondary component. He does. I do like Jalen Brunson. I do like Tim Hardaway Jr., and I do like their bench, even with Spencer Dinwiddie. But as I've said before, if you had a component like Kawhi Leonard in a Dallas roster, I guarantee you they would not be in this position. They would have made it into the finals. They probably would have won a finals title. And it again would have shown how lethal Kawhi Leonard is when he is healthy. And Luka would have done all the talking. He would have done all of that. But that's Dallas's future. And then, unfortunately for Utah, they just can't figure themselves out. And I love Donovan Mitchell, and I do like their roster, but they can't have anybody that defends the wing, and that is the reality. And that's where it leads us all to where here we are in the NBA Finals, Golden State and Boston. Both of them with really bright futures. Golden State, I have a feeling, may win this thing in 6. Come next year, they're going to probably rerun it again. But after that, they're going to have to part ways with this. And here's what's funny. We all watched The Last Dance and how Chicago, they won 3 titles and they won 3 more titles in winning 6. And Michael Jordan, who had pulled away, played baseball, and then by that time in 95, when he came back, the team was unbelievable. But Michael couldn't win without Scottie Pippen. Those were the only times that they won the championships, when both Michael and Scottie Pippen were together. The funny thing about Golden State is they won before Kevin Durant, with Kevin Durant, and they're going to win without him. And this is after him. It's kind of incredible. But that's what I think. I think 6-game series. I'm leaning towards Golden State. I do love Boston, and I do think they have a really good defensive repertoire, but it's hard to contain it with all those shooters. And Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole and a lot of these young kids, they've stepped up in a massive way, and they've got a chip on their shoulders. So I really do like their potential. Coming up next, there are a few things that I look at when it comes to the NHL. And I've witnessed a lot of these different, all these different series, because now we have the Western Conference Finals with Colorado and Edmonton. Connor McDavid versus Nathan MacKinnon. And I will explain who has the upper hand and the edge in that series, because we've got Game 7 between Carolina and the Rangers. I watched the highlights of that Rangers game, and I thought that was great because, I mean, New York was all over Carolina. They were aggressive. They played great, and all their offensive opportunities all opened up. So I'll be explaining that here coming up next. All right, so folks, as I've said before, you know, I can't get enough of one app that I play almost every single day with all of the matchups that are posted and loaded up every day of the week. And that is more than just an app in itself. It's called Super Draft Pro. And right now, it's the best time to be starting to bet right now, because the fact of we have the NBA Finals set, we still have Stanley Cup playoffs going on, and we also got baseball series, and soon we'll be having the NFL season kick back up. But with Super Draft Pro is a proud sponsor of Caesars Entertainment. And the best part of it is, not only is it just a betting, not just your particular betting app, but it's also one that you share with your friends and family, and you can earn so much money as a bettor, as also a daily fantasy sports player. And of course, you'll also be betting on prop bets, the newest addition to Super Draft Pro. There is lots of ways that you could possibly win with daily contests that are going on every day of the week. And and best of all, you get paid. You get paid even sharing the app with your friends, family, coworkers, and so much more. Want to learn more about Super Draft Pro? Go online to superdraftpro.com, superdraftpro.com, and let them know Jake the Snake Silva sent you as well, so that way you can get your instant entry into a few contests that go on each and every single day. Super Draft Pro. Download like a pro, sign up like a pro, play like a pro with Super Draft Pro.
Bitch, I'm a ball, bitch, I'm a ball. Don't get no ball, don't get no ball. What's in my cup? What's in my cup? Full of that punch, look at that punch. Bitch, I'm a ball, ballin' like Kobe. Ho, keep it moving, cause you do not know me. Bitch, I'm a ball, ballin' like Kobe. Ho, keep it moving, cause you do not know me. Bitch, I'm a ball, can't talk in Milwaukee. Tell my dog sick of me, ain't do no barking. Pass me some greens, you know I'ma spark it. Mama got ass, told her to arch it. Pull up at the spot, hop out and don't park it. Bino say, always keep one in the cartridge. With Joey, our paper, so we going toxic. Came from the swamp to visit the tropics. Check out the scenery. Tell love mama to the backwoods right by the lake. And I had
Pressure. Some on these gas get hectic. Up on my bitch in the best shit. Wanna act goofy, stretch quick. Pressure. Some on these gas get hectic. Up on my bitch in the best shit. Wanna act goofy, stretch quick.
Back here with you on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Jake the Snake Silva on a Memorial Day edition of the show. Hope all of you guys are having a great Monday. What's going on, Cincinnati crew? What's going on, Philly Sports Talk? What's going on, Mex coverage? Everybody all joining in here. So the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs have been really, really good. We are now set Colorado against Edmonton after Colorado just pummeled St. Louis, and the Edmonton Oilers, of all teams, had managed through against the Calgary Flames, and only Tampa Bay awaits who their opponent will be for Game 7 between the Rangers and the Hurricanes. So Colorado and Edmonton, this is going to be a fun matchup. It's going to be really, really fun. But there is, however, a huge, huge edge on a few teams. You know, on a few things for this series itself. I think it'll be interesting. But both teams, you know, between Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon, they are very fascinating players. I mean, their skill sets are super high, and they are crucial to both their franchises. So I think this will be an interesting matchup. But this is Colorado's year for the taking. I mean, you looked around the whole Western Conference, and Calgary had a really good year, but in the end, they burnt out. And there was no answer whatsoever. And I wasn't even seeing a whole lot of that series, because the only thing that really, I think that was a big, huge turnoff for me was basically the goaltending. I mean, the goaltending was not great. Not at all. St. Louis and Colorado, very competitive, but yet Jordan Binnington goes down, in comes the backup, and things changed for St. Louis, but they still had managed to try to keep themselves within the game. And that was what was going to be huge for Colorado's fate. But yet they got it done and they moved on. But all the rest of them, like Minnesota and the Kings, all these other teams in the Western Conference, Nashville as well, they got pummeled. But as I look at both these teams, Colorado right now has the absolute upside. And there's a few things that I'll point out as far as what this matchup means and who's got the upper edge. So let's start with speed. I think Edmonton's got the upper hand of speed because look at what you watch every single time when we watch games of the Edmonton Oilers, and it's all Connor McDavid and the rest of them that really flow with him. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, so many different offensive players. They are built for speed. And Connor McDavid's fast. Now, Colorado does have speed on their end between Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Nazem Kadri, and a lot of others that have been very, very productive on their offense. But only Edmonton has that quarter amount of edge on speed. So I give that for Edmonton. Now, scoring opportunities, I give that to Colorado because they have been hyper aggressive on offense. They've opened up a lot of different key holes for them to execute. And Nathan MacKinnon, in that last game that they lost, I mean, that goal, from how good that he is, it was so quick. He scares everybody on the defense. But that just tells you how good of a player he is. And Colorado is that hyper aggressive on offense. You can't contain them. That is going to be a handful for Edmonton. The other part, defensive play, I think honestly, Colorado has the edge on that because Cale Makar, Devin Taves, and the rest of their defensive core. Now, without Sam Girard, I know that hurts, but they've been doing really, really good since his absence. And Cale Makar, since being drafted by Colorado, and with how big of an impact that he has made the second he's been a part of this squad, has been huge. So defensively, with him and the acquisition of Devin Taves, it's been really good. There's been no hesitations whatsoever with how this team sets up defensively. I know Edmonton, with Darnell Nurse, he had a better year, and then they also acquired Duncan Keith. But in more of the realistic set, like the realistic aspect of it, Colorado had the upper edge. And finally, the biggest thing that is huge for them, goaltending. Colorado has a massive edge on goaltending than Edmonton does. Because I'll be honest with you, Darcy Kemper, like, he had spurts of being a solid goaltender. And all it took for him was to be in the right chemistry. He had to be in the right organization in order for him to produce. So I think Darcy Kemper and Pavel Francouz, I think they both are very remarkable. Because even though both of them are really good 1 and 2s, it's like how you watch with baseball. You got to have a great 1-2 punch, and then the rest of them are just your balancers of the rotation. You know, I always say that the third guy in the rotation is always the crucial one that keeps it balanced. Because then 4 and 5, you can kind of get a little bit of a coin toss, but that's where they keep up with the flow from the 1-2 punches and then right there to the 3. And so Kemper and Francouz are really good 1-2 punches. And they have been huge through this time because Colorado had went through Philip Grubauer, and since then he has completely fallen off the cliff. So, and looking at, honestly, Edmonton with Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen, it's not that great. It is not that great. The only reason that Edmonton has really gotten this far is because they've trusted a lot of their key components. But Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen are not the answer. You know, I've watched it in that series against Calgary. How does Mike Smith literally let that puck go right over his shoulder that far, and it's a goal? It's little things like that I watch, and I just know right off the bat, Edmonton is going to be mopped all over. But they are going to, I think, win a couple games. They may get it to 6. I'm going to leave it to about 6. Because if it ends in 5, there's a reason why that it does. But Colorado has matched up with the speed, even though Edmonton has the edge on it. They've matched up, but they're hyper aggressive on offense. They're great. They are really, really good defensively. And then you have the goaltending, because goaltending is literally everything. You know, I know a lot of people don't speak a whole lot on goaltending, but I mean, look at Tampa. Tampa Bay has all the players there with great passing, with great offense. The defense is also really, really good with Ryan McDonough and several other key components. But Andrei Vasilevsky, you know, he's a really, 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 really good goaltender. And this is what's going to be huge about the series between Carolina and the Rangers, because you've got Igor Shesterkin and you've also got Antti Ranta, which Antti Ranta we haven't even seen in the last couple of years, who's played this good, and yet Carolina, all they relied on was precise passing, offensive capabilities, plus their defense is actually pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. But New York they're a young team. They have a lot of really good upsides on their offense with Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, and Artemi Panarin, and a few others. And Adam Fox has been a really, really good, solid defender as well, who also has offensive scoring capabilities. But Igor Shesterkin, that was the question of how New York was literally going to revamp this team, get him back into the Stanley Cup playoffs after the retirement of Henrik Lundqvist. It's not that easy, but they're here, and they've got a crucial game ahead of them. So, but looking at Colorado and Edmonton, I think it's going to be a 6-game series without question, possibly 5, because Colorado, there's nothing standing in their way. They've got a real sure opportunity to make it into the Stanley Cup final, win it, because everybody else, the only one that I can think could give them a handful is Tampa. But if Tampa doesn't move on, it's a solid year for Colorado. They don't have Vegas in the playoffs, which really gave them huge, huge problems. And so, but out of everybody else, Edmonton will have their spurts, but their goaltending is not enough than what Colorado has. They trust everybody on the ice. They trust their goaltending, and it's solid, and they're very, very situational play. They're big on that. So I think Colorado, this is a solid year for them, and they're high, especially with their expectations of being Stanley Cup final champions. So this is the year to prove it, because look at all the contracts from top to bottom on that roster. That's not that easy to hold. You got a lot of these players that are that solid that they're going to want to ask for more. They're going to want long-term. And it depends on if Colorado, and here's the funny thing. Joe Sakic, the GM there, he's been there. He has been there between him and Peter Forsberg, and this has been the first time in 20 years that we've ever seen a Colorado team be this incredibly solid. But now the ultimate goal is to winning it. So I think this could be the year for Colorado for sure. I really do think so. Coming up next, my best for last. The interesting part that we will look at is just kind of getting an evaluation on we'll evaluate a little bit more on the NBA offseason. But here's another thing too. And one thing that I think will be very interesting for all of you guys, all of the fans, because it's clear that the Oakland A's are getting closer and closer and closer to leaving Oakland and to possibly finding a new destination in Las Vegas. And I will explain all of the key things why this is a good thing for the Oakland A's. You do not want to miss that. Well, guys, summertime is only heating up. And here's what's funny, because even though we have Memorial Day today, which is a holiday of remembrance, but by this time, this is where summertime really kicks up the heat. And what better than to get yourselves some gear that is hot off the press right now. Hats, hoodies, t-shirts, and so much more with the SpotlightSportsGear.com. Look up all the great prices, look up all the great stuff from all of your favorite shows, and of course, the network as a whole. We really do appreciate all your guys' love and support, and get yourselves geared up during the summertime. And we've even got tank tops as well for you guys to be soaking up the sun out there and representing your favorite network and your favorite show on the network as well. That's SpotlightSportsGear.com, SpotlightSportsGear.com for all of your merchandising needs. All right, folks, back here with you on the Snake Sports Talk Show. But I definitely wanted to end up breaking this down because I thought that this was really, really interesting before we get to the best for last. And then first and foremost, I want to thank all of you guys for joining in here for me today on this Memorial Day edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Thank you all for joining me here this morning. I know it's kind of weird, but I had an off day, and I figured, hey, I'd get up early in the morning, get this all knocked out, and enjoy the rest of the day. Going to be hanging out with family, going to be hanging out with friends, and hanging out with the fiance as well. So we got a really good stacked day today. So this is what I thought was interesting. So I looked over this weekend, and of course, all of these things are surrounding, the Oakland Athletics, because in the last few weeks, close to about a month and a half, attendance has been at the all-time lowest, which has been close to about an average of 2,500 inside Rickey Henderson Field at the Coliseum. And reports now have been saying, and this will be announced in the next coming weeks, but 2 undisclosed locations have now been the focal point for a potential departure from Oakland to Las Vegas for the Oakland A's. And a lot of people have been involved in this. Billy Beane, Dave Cavall, everybody all within the Oakland A's front office. So it not even close. Charles, not even close. That is not even a sustainable market. Not at all. While you've got literally thousands and thousands of people inside Dodger Stadium, Yankee Stadium, like there's no way 2,500 is even that close to being sustainable in a big sports market like this. This is where I have preached this several times, but the Oakland A's needed to move. They needed to make the move. Look at over the years that Oakland, when they have retained their teams and all of the money they put into it, because the A's didn't show up until the late 60s, early 70s from Kansas City at one point, and they made their way to Oakland. Brand new city. It was just growth. It was the town, right? And much like how Vegas will be. But the A's, they won 3 straight World Series from 72, 73, and 74. And all it was acclimating to the culture, to the fan base, and then the A's had made a name for themselves. But the biggest portion of all of that, the 1989 World Series between the Giants and the A's, where the earthquake struck, and that had cost, the city of Oakland a lot of property damages. And that's also to where it leans into in 2011 when the pipeline that had bursted and had not been fixed since. It's been 11 years. And that pipeline has still not been fixed. It's been babied. And what happened, because this was a game between the Mariners and the A's, where the Seattle organization had to dress up in the same locker room as the A's. How awkward is that? And it tells you a lot about what Oakland County and the city themselves, what their money is invested into. And it's unfortunate because the only stable economy that Oakland truly has is Alameda. I know a lot of people have told me here and there, but Oakland has not been the same city since the 70s. Since 70s, probably 80s, but that's entirely it. I mean, Oakland has always been a tough, competitive organization, but this is past the timeline now. Because we remember the 2001 team, right? All of you have seen the movie Moneyball and how Billy Beane was able to really excavate it and how he really got past it to where the team was in the ALCS in 2006. All the rest of that. It has all been trying to navigate through a tough, higher baseball market like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Astros, the Cubs, all these teams. And the A's right now, they're in no way, shape, or form that they could even keep up with the market. This is why a move to Las Vegas is so crucial. And I know a lot of people in Oakland don't like the move. They've been boycotting this. This is also the reason why that attendance has been that low, because of the boycott. Because the city of Oakland does not want to generate any money to keep in the team. Look at the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders have changed several times from Oakland to Los Angeles, then to Oakland again, and then here they are as the Las Vegas Raiders, because there is no stable market whatsoever for Oakland. And to top that off, the Golden State Warriors were not just Golden State at the time. They were San Francisco Warriors. But they all played within the Bay Area, and even being in Golden State, and they got themselves a brand new arena, an Oracle Arena, and just right smack dab where it touches more of San Francisco than it does of Oakland. And that is where all the money revenue, because it's Silicon Valley. And they're in the finals. So the A's have such a competitive feel to them. They just don't have the money to show for it. I mean, I will tell you this. If the A's left tomorrow and they went to Las Vegas, how many of you would even bet that Chris Bryant, Joey Gallo, depending on it, possibly Bryce Harper, and a lot of these guys that have been born and raised and have played in Las Vegas, how many of them would opt out of their contracts just to come to Vegas? Or even be in the American League just to play in Vegas? I mean, we do love, interleague play or even in division play, but I guarantee you that's going to fill the seats. I mean, could you imagine A's, Dodgers almost every year and how packed the ballparks would be? I mean, it's crazy. But, at the same time, but Vegas has been building themselves. It's not even close to a small market, Charles. We're on the sports market now because the Vegas Golden Knights, they've pinned themselves here. They've been to the playoffs in 4 straight seasons. And they also have a Stanley Cup final appearance. And then you have the Las Vegas Raiders, who they made the playoffs despite all of the dysfunction, all of that mess. But here's the thing, Charles, and I will tell you this because I'm born and raised here. We are a baseball football city. We have been. And by the way, the Golden Knights, they'll be sustainable. They will be. Not even close. Not even close. I am sorry, Charles, but they are nowhere close to Arizona. Absolutely not. Arizona, to me personally, they feel like Ottawa because all their talent all shipped away and they have no idea where in the hell that they're playing. Now they're going to be playing in Arizona State, which that's going to be their home at least until they actually find a new home. But the Golden Knights, they're sustainable. The fact of the matter is just because they didn't make the playoffs does not mean they are in trouble of their future. But it all comes down to how their organization really pans out. Because they got to stop trading away all these future first-round picks. They need to stop doing that, and they need to start thinking about their farm system. But it's been a baseball football town. Trust me. I've been born and raised here. I see everything around me. We're big on baseball. Why? Because we had the Stars, we had the 51s, we now have the Aviators, and everybody here loves baseball. Football is absolutely huge. Why? Because you got sports betting. Everybody bets on the NFL, and more money revenue is being generated to these casinos, and they're generated all from, like, you see it all on the football parties, you see it on all these parlays. They're all invested in the NFL because that's how big the NFL is. Now, eventually, they will get to the NBA market. It may take some time, but the WNBA is here. They've experimented on that, and they believe they can make it work. The other part, you have the Summer League. And a lot of guys, when they come out here, it's fun. It's fun being in the Summer League. I have several friends of mine that are big-time NBA fans, and they love going to the summer leagues because they love to see all these young kids develop, but it's also opening a possible door for maybe a relocation or an expansion. That's what I look at with the NBA. But in baseball, because they want to talk about expansion, that just means that they now have to literally evaluate all the money that they're generating, which I know that for a fact that they do, and figure out how they can even out the league. Because then that means if they start to expand in Las Vegas, what are we going to do about the Aviators? Are we going to send them to Henderson? But what good is that going to do? They're out there in Summerlin, or they'd be basically the Summerlin Aviators. We don't know. But I guarantee you that's what would be the thought. They would have to expand to Vegas, and then they would have to look at other cities that are out there, maybe like Nashville, Tennessee, or maybe like one other really good location too. Like, it'd be hard for Utah because of the fact of they're big on the Jazz, but it's such an outdoor type of state. I have been there several times. They love I love the outdoors. I love camping. I love fishing. I love doing all the things outdoors. It's not too big of a baseball town, even though they have the Salt Lake Bees, but it's more about the Jazz. But there are other options, but that's where they have to search those options. But I think a relocation would be better because at least saves cost. They wouldn't have to pull out of pocket so much, and more of that money can be invested on how that they can reshape the league. So again, I just think that for the A's, this is an upper hand for them. I know a lot of people don't want to see the change with Oakland, but here's the thing, though. You could have been problem solvers in Oakland. You could have. You could have been problem solvers with, the Raiders or even Golden State. But the fact of the matter is, all this money generated revenue, and we know how ridiculous California laws are, and especially their state taxes, but it's not a sustainable market. It was back in the 70s, but it's not a sustainable market. Not anymore. This is where you really have to acknowledge the change. I know it sucks and I know that it hurts, but I can tell you a lot of teams that have changed over the years. I mean, hell, look at Montreal. They wanted the Expos back so bad that once they got bought out by the Washington Nationals, that's who they are now. I mean, it used to be fun watching them. And they had a lot of great players. Randy Johnson, Vladimir Guerrero, Larry Walker, Gary Carter. They had a lot of really good players in Montreal. But the problem was, couldn't generate the attendance. And there was not a huge positive upside for Montreal. Everybody was young. I mean, Randy Johnson couldn't figure out his pitch until he got to Seattle. I mean, he was a big unit and he was a great asset, but he didn't figure everything out until Seattle. And then there's, then you got the Houston Texans that were just, an expanded franchise that they started out small. They've had their spurts where they've gone to the playoffs, and now they're in big time rebuild mode, but it is very, very tough. It's very tough in this kind of market, but it's still sustainable because the fact of look at the NFL. The NFL is king for this. So because of the money revenue from TV ratings, from attendances, and all the rest of it, you got to think about things like that. But I think this will be a good thing for the A's. It'll bring them back into that baseball market. They'll have enough money generated revenue because trust me, just because it's the A's does not mean that Vegas is not going to want to go and watch a baseball game. Every single one of them in Vegas, there's Cubs fans, there's Padres fans, there's Cardinals fans, there's Dodger fans, everywhere you go, and you got big-time Yankee fans. Very rare do you see a couple of fans that are either fans of the Nationals, fans of the Astros, fans of, the Milwaukee Brewers. Very rare. But once they are here, that's the thing. All those fans here that are either locals in Las Vegas but are different team, they're different team fans, they're going to want to see a baseball game. And yes, you will have a time period where they would, at the very least, expand their fan base, but they just want to watch a baseball game. I guarantee you, how many times would the Dodgers and would the A's face off against each other? Like, Magic Johnson would be happy as all hell. The fact that he owns the LA Dodgers and then comes out here to Vegas on vacations and he's making a ton of money because of it. I'm telling you, Vegas is big on this market now. They're making their statement. They're not fully big like Los Angeles and New York and even Chicago or possibly Texas, but they will be a big sports market. And this is the move that's going to make it happen. I promise you that. All right. My best for last, of course, to close up here on this show, as of course, and I know I got carried away a little bit, but that was just kind of something that I wanted to bring up because it is getting closer to happening. So, all right. So we know that a lot of players, we know that this NBA offseason is going to be very, very interesting. And there's a lot of questions for a lot of teams because we've watched teams all throughout the And I know that there are a lot of things that you kind of look at from here and there. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the league right now, how they pan out. It will be very, very interesting moving forward. But I do think that there are a lot of teams that they do have needs. So I'm going to start with all these teams right now in short spurts. So for the Atlanta Hawks, they really have to shape around their talent with Trae Young. It's a young core-based team. I know for the fact that they've been trying to get over the hump in the Eastern Conference because they made a huge Eastern Conference Finals appearance last year. But still, I love Trae Young, but they've got to get a complimentary piece next to him. And so I do think this will be very interesting to watch Atlanta during the offseason, but they have got to get somebody a complimentary piece that matches up to Trae Young's ability. The Brooklyn Nets, they got to find their identity. I don't know what it is. It's an absolute mess. But their identity has just been flown all over the place. I mean, James Harden left, goes to Philadelphia. Kyrie Irving has been here, yet not there. I don't know what to make of it. And Kevin Durant is just all alone on an island. And so if, in fact, something does happen with this, because I don't think they really should bring back Kyrie Irving, in my opinion. I think that if you generate enough to where you can now shape it to Kevin Durant's abilities, because he only has so much, you don't want to throw all of his talent away in the garbage. You want to be able to shape it. It's a lot for Steve Nash, but they got to figure this thing out. The Charlotte Hornets, young core team, but I think if they could really reshape up their bench, it'd be interesting. I think that if they could really, really reshape up their bench, that'll be a really good, interesting team, because I think LaMelo Ball, and PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, all these guys, they've got potential, and it's a young team, and Terry Rozier. But I know that with the fact that they're stuck on, the Gordon Hayward contract, it's not a whole lot that you could really think of for Charlotte. So I think really reshaping up their bench and being competitive, and also at the end of the day, I truly think this will be great. I think this will be really, really good for them. The Chicago Bulls, I know this year when they made the playoffs, this was really good. This is a really, really good year for Chicago. I think they understand what their chemistry is, but they got to get more complementary pieces. I know that they're talking about maybe getting a big, but I think they need to be smart about it, because I know a lot of people kept flirting with the idea of Anthony Davis go back home to Chicago, but he's a liability. He gets hurt too much. Chicago can't really build around that, because now you've got your core players and you want to be able to build upon that. I think that if they make the right moves, and this organization really has made a lot of moves, but if they make the right ones that complement it to their momentum, they could possibly be an Eastern Conference Finals team for next year. I think that's a possibility. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I think they really need to bolster up I think they need to bolster up a little more of that defense. They've got offensive capabilities, which I was so surprised about Cleveland. They were a real good team. They're young. They're headed in the right direction. Look, LeBron flirting with the fact of trying to go back to Cleveland is just don't even mention it, because Cleveland is fine where they are. They've got young core pieces. They're working a lot to their abilities. Their offense, I think, is really good, but the defense needs to be reshaped up a little bit more. And I think if they figure that out, they'll be a much, much better team. Dallas, they need a second unit for Luka Doncic. I've been saying that several times now. I do like Jalen Brunson. I do like Tim Hardaway Jr., but if you get a second unit next to Luka, and it doesn't mean that he has to be the all-in leader, because that's what Luka is. You're shaping your organization around his strengths. So a second unit for Luka Doncic would be perfect, and Dallas may be back in this position again next year. They could be. The Denver Nuggets, they really need, much like Dallas, I think they need a big-time component next to Nikola Jokic, because I think they asked so much for him. Then he gets contained, and now they're just one dimension. I mean, I like Will Barton. I do like Jamal Murray, but they feel so like one-dimensional when that happens. But it's not like Denver is that far away when it comes to their potential. So much like, Dallas, they need a second component next to Nikola Jokic. Because in the end, the second, you've got Jamal Murray, who is your big-time shooter, and you got to get a lot of more complementary pieces around him to get you more shots, get more time on the floor, and also really work well with the defense. I think you'd have a really good shot. Detroit, I think Detroit really just needs to bolster up that roster because it's young. Now, I do like Cunningham. I do think he's really, really good. He's a really good piece to what Detroit may be working through, but they've got to really bolster up that roster. The Houston Rockets, young team. All I would say is that even if you acquire a lot of draft picks, you got to at least draft the right guys. You got to draft the right guys that can really just settle in on what Houston's trying to really fix up what they lost. But it is a young team. It's going to take some time. So it's really just shaping the chemistry. And I think Houston will be better than what they were last year, but it's going to take some time for them until they become really a competitive team. The Indiana Pacers, they're in rebuild mode because by the time Domantas Sabonis is out, and you had several opportunities here, whether it was getting into the playoffs, it's so hard to determine what Indiana's really doing. But I think it's clear they are in rebuild mode, so they're going to end up acquiring draft picks. They're probably going to end up shopping for somebody that's a crucial piece that could be the center for TJ Warren, and also to really shape up what the Pacers are doing. The Clippers' biggest thing is that health. Everybody has to be healthy. Plus, they need to add an extra component as well for offense and defense, because this team, they're great at defending the wing, but Kawhi Leonard hurt. Paul George, it felt like he was just trying to carry this Clippers team. But it has changed a lot. It really has changed a lot in this organization. But I think if the health, and I do think that if they get an offensive or defensive component, this could help them in the long run. But cross your fingers that, Kawhi comes back healthy and he's a lot better and everybody else is following up with his potential. The Lakers, buy out Russell Westbrook's contract, because right now it's an absolute circus. Everybody's way too old. And the one thing as a premier franchise, right now we're witnessing one in the NBA Finals, and then you've got the Lakers. That's not easy to do. So my only guess is that it's tough to say just how this would even play, how this would even pan out. So I think it's really quite clear. So I think the Lakers, you buy out Russell Westbrook's contract, and then you just got to shape it up right there. That's really all you got to do. The Memphis Grizzlies, they're a young team. I love John Morant, and I do love what everybody else has shaped up in this organization. They were quite the surprise team, but they do need an extra component. And people have been back and forth between, John Morant being healthy, being hurt, what their records have been. Either way, John is young. He's going to be learning, and he's going to be, strengthening his play. But it's interesting. It's very interesting how this works out. Miami, consistency, because I've seen this all with Tyler Hero and with Duncan Robinson and with a few others. I do like Kyle Lowry, and I do like Jimmy Butler, and I do like what they have with Bam Adebayo, but it's all about consistency. So I think they might bolster this roster up a little more, but again, crucial spots, I need somebody to step up because it's going to be either one of those shooters, Tyler Hero or Duncan Robinson. Either way, this Miami team is fun to watch, but this is not a whole lot of consistency. Milwaukee, it's tough to say, but I think health will be a big thing for the Milwaukee Bucks. I think they already have shaped up what their defense is, and everything all flows through Giannis. I know it was tough with Chris Middleton and with a couple others, but they've got a really good defensive core. Maybe they might try to sneak in a shooter here and there, but Milwaukee, the biggest thing will be health. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they have really got to put their foot down as far as leadership, because right now this is a young team, and I do love Anthony Edwards, but Karl Anthony Towns right now has just been kind of off and on, off and on. There's not really a whole lot of leadership, but I can honestly say it could flow through Anthony Edwards. So, if they could get pieces that shape up their bench and shape up that lineup, it'll be a better thing for Minnesota, because it has been a long time running for the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have got to figure themselves out. New Orleans, I think the only thing that we really can say is that you got to make Zion happy, because right now, whether it's staying in New Orleans or it's letting him go, because this is not working. This is not working for Zion. He's been on an overweight streak right now, and it's kind of scary when it comes to injury prone. This has not looked good. I don't know. I don't know how you even match this thing, but I just don't think this really truly works out. So they just got to make Zion happy one way or another. The New York Knicks, they are a pretty scrappy team. Obi Toppin, I think, is going to be really good. RJ Barrett, they're shaping a lot of that young talent to where they are a scrappy team. Now, I do have questions about Julius Randle, but they'll probably be a mixture of young and old veterans. And I think if New York really does play this right with their organization, this could be a much better setup, because I know everybody was excited about the Knicks when they made the playoffs, but remember, that was just a one and done year. They still got more work to do. So I think if they work this right in the draft and they work it right with free agency, we might see New York. We might see a little bit of some revival there. Oklahoma City, build around your youngsters. That's really all you got. I mean, Oklahoma City young team, they're building around all their draft picks, much like Cleveland, but I think Oklahoma City still has more work to do before they could even make that move. Orlando Magic, pray for a great first round pick. They got the number one pick in the draft. So you're just kind of praying that the guy that comes in number one overall, he's going to end up being the focal point for this team to really shape up. The Sixers, do not extend James Harden. I would opt out of that thing, because you've already done one thing right. That was get Ben Simmons out of town. Now it's restructuring your bench. It is restructuring your shooters. So that way, it will be a lot easier. So, and I think Philadelphia, they're a great organization. I love the roster, and Joel Embiid is clearly their leader. But James Harden, we saw, shrank in the playoffs, and their bench, without Seth Curry and without Andre Drummond and a couple others, it wasn't the same. So I think that they might be smart and start to shape up their bench, and they may end up seeing what shooters are out there, because they've got the defensive capabilities. You could still roll the dice and gamble with Tobias Harris, but James Harden is not worth that contract extension. Phoenix, because DeAndre Ayton's going to leave. The Phoenix really needs to get that competitive edge. I do like Chris Paul. He brings a lot of that to that attention, but I'm talking about some of these guys like Devin Booker and a few others. This has been a really good team like Cameron Payne, Cam Johnson. Like these guys really, like, they have to have that competitive edge. Phoenix was definitely going to be the team that I thought would have made it to the Western Conference Finals. That didn't seem to be the case. They slowed down. And so they just need to find that competitive edge, whether it's somewhere in free agency, but they need it back. Because if this is only this window, I love Monty Williams too, but this window is only open for so long before it closes, because Phoenix is good. Phoenix is really good. They've got a bright future ahead of them, but they need to have more of that competitive edge again. Portland, Dame time, ? Because time's ticking. I don't know what seems to be going on with Portland, but this has got to shape around with Damian Lillard. You got to give him some help. But I don't know in a market for Portland that if they could possibly do that. I still have said, just given the best of wishes, honestly, I don't see Portland really kind of putting out to getting more talent around him. But Damian Lillard, he's loyal. The worst thing I can see for this is some type of injury, and it doesn't look great. Sacramento, they need to really find consistency, much like Miami does, but in a sense where it's a young core team. De'Aaron Fox, they now have the Mantis Sabonis. They've got a few other pieces that they can really shape around, and I think this will be great for Sacramento. But they still are a young core team. They just need to find that consistency within them so that they can start to be on the trend of winning more games than losing some. San Antonio, I think at this point you got to give a proper farewell for Greg Popovich. I mean, that's it. Like, this is not the same team that it was with Tony Parker, with Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard. This is not the same. This team has not been the same. I think it's really, I'm not going to say it's moved past Popovich because he is a very smart head coach, but we're past those days now. There's just nothing you can really do. So, and then Toronto, by the way, look for Toronto, because I know they got Fred VanVleet. I know that there have been a lot of talks about Pascal Siakam and all the rest of them, but I think at that point, they really need to start looking for more offensive players, because they do have a defensive DNA, but there's just some of those things for Toronto I like about them. I think Nick Nurse is a good coach, and I think he really has managed this well with this group. But, I mean, think about it. That's how they were from the time that Kawhi Leonard was. They were a defensive team, and they also were capable of needing a basket. So I think if they get more of that offense and still keep the consistency with defense, perfect. Like, absolutely perfect. The Utah Jazz, give Donovan Mitchell some help. Like, give him some help. This is now really flirting the fact that maybe Donovan Mitchell does stay or he doesn't, because he's not happy with the way that Utah has really panned out in these last couple of years. They got eliminated early in the playoffs. They can't get past the first round. They know they're a better squad, but you need to give him some help, because Donovan Mitchell's not going to stay there for long. He may end up seeking a trade elsewhere, but that's between the organization, and a superstar player. And I like what he does. And there are also some times where I think he kind of disappears in some ways, but I just think he just needs that complimentary piece and that help. So who knows how Utah would shape up. And finally, Washington. I think honestly, you got to I honestly think that if you're Bradley Beal, you got to get the hell out of Washington right now that they are in rebuild mode. Rui Hachimura and a couple of other good pieces for, the Wizards. I think it's it's safe to say that some of these rebuilding teams like Orlando, like Cleveland, but even though Cleveland is not that far away, Detroit, Charlotte in some ways, not too far themselves, either Indiana and Sacramento. I mean, Washington's kind of like in the middle of the pack, yet kind of below average. I wouldn't say they're worse than Orlando because Orlando's just a young organization. But Bradley Beal, as I've said, people will be big on the Bradley Beal sweepstakes. I'm telling you, because the Lakers want in on him. Several teams would want in on Bradley Beal. So it'll be interesting. And notice why I didn't say, Golden State and Boston, because they're in the finals. But there are some things about Boston. They may end up getting some complementary pieces to add to their roster. And then Golden State, they just do what Golden State does best because they got one more year to run this thing. And then eventually they'll start to break away. They'll start to now think about their future options. And that's it. That's all I would say for both those teams. But there you go. That's what I think this preview is going to be all about. But if there are a few teams that I'd look at during the preview of the offseason, I mean, the Lakers are one of them for sure. I think Brooklyn, how that they're going to shape this thing up with Kevin Durant, and can they help him? But I think Toronto will be interesting. Miami in a way. And I would expect Denver to really be the team to look for if they want to get aggressive. And same in, like, as I've said before, Dallas needs to figure out what they need to do to helping out Luka Doncic because you can't wait this long. So that's my interesting point from there. But I think this offseason is going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, and I cannot wait to see what other moves are going to be. But the Lakers need to really get their acts together because this is a premier franchise. You cannot have this happen. So that's all I got to say from there. All righty, folks. Well, that's going to do it here for me on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Jake the Snake signing off here for you guys. Like, follow, and subscribe to all of the platforms here. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram as well, where you can find me. Also, you can find us on iHeartRadio at the Spotlight Sports Network. And we will see you guys on Friday. Take care of you guys. Have a great day. Happy Memorial Day, as we remember all of those who have paid the ultimate price and have made the ultimate sacrifices to protecting our freedoms and, of course, our growth in our nation. So thank every veteran that you come across today. Thank them for their services. And, hey, buy maybe breakfast or something like that, because that's what it's all about. Like, I know it's one that's like it's an indicator that we're getting into summer. But these are kind of the little things that teach you about gratitude and that teach you about respect. So definitely shake a veteran's hand, thank them for their services, and we always remember of the ones who couldn't make it home. So thank you all for your great services, and we appreciate you every single day of our lives. So thank you guys all for being here today, and we will see you guys all on Friday. Take care.
Live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts right now.